think this is mostly remote. Is that why this is a small room?
Just depends on the group. Sometimes there's more people that want to be here in person. Sometimes it's more people who want to stay at home.
Or they got traffic.
Or they just got off work. Just comes down to person. I do not discriminate. I love all of my students equally. But being here in person, I feel like it's better. So you get to actually talk to me instead of communicate through the Slack channel. All right.
Power, yeah.
Oh yeah, these little nubs here pop up. You can plug in. Is that one of those ergonomic mice?
Yeah, this is.
I've been thinking about getting one of those. Ooh, with the split keyboard too.
Yeah, my brother works for Pocket Gem, and I saw him pull this stuff out. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I need it." So I said, "Well, I'm going to think about starting boot camp." So
nice.
We got the same genetics, so let's just skip the middle.
There you go.
Yeah.
If it works, then it works, you know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh no, there won't be. I mean, you can if you want to, but you definitely don't need to. Hey, Brandon, what's up? I'm going to mute you, not because I don't care about you, but just because it interferes with the stream. So for those of you who are remote, you're going to be communicating through the Slack channel. But I appreciate you being here, man. Feel that. Can you guys hear me okay? Is the mic working as expected? Sweet. Good to hear. Every once in a while, the computer tries to hook up to my headphones that I leave at my desk, which is always fun when I'm 15 minutes into lecture and somebody's like, all I hear is muffles. So want to make sure you guys can experience the class as much as possible. Cool. So we're going to give a couple of minutes for everybody to join up, for those of you who are here early. So thank you for being here a couple minutes early. But yeah, I'll start the lecture in like 3 or 4 minutes, give everybody a chance to join in, and we will get underway. We got important stuff on the docket tonight. It's going to be fun. There we go. Let's see how we doing over here. Whew, all right. Brady. Brady is here in person. I'm going to go find that dude. Where are you at? Brady.
Hey, it's gone.
How are
you? Good. I'm Josh.
Josh, I'm Brady.
Great. Let's see where it's gone. Yeah.
There we go. Gathering up. What's up? Happy Monday. All right. Let's see here. Mute this. Whew. All right. What's
I want
up?
to make sure it's here or
Yeah, you're in a nice spot. Welcome, welcome.
anywhere.
Anywhere you like.
Here?
Yeah, go for it. Dip in. Assassin's Creed fan?
I love Assassin's Creed.
There you go. I played the first couple, and then I did Black Flag, and that was the last one I touched.
I have the last one for 1 year and a half, but I haven't played it.
Oh man, Odyssey, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did not have time.
I know that feeling.
I load it. I play like one day 10 minutes, another day 10 minutes, and that's it.
Yep, that's about what I get too. I get new games. I'm like, man, I can't wait to play this, and then I play 1 hour per week, maybe if I'm lucky.
Play out, that's good.
Yeah. Right? Just squeeze it in any chance you can. All right, we're going to give just a couple more minutes for people to join up. Make sure that you have posted in the channel. If you are here, please put it in person if you're here in person, and remote if you are here remotely. That way I can take roll later. I want you guys to get credit for being present since you are. All right. Perfect. Everybody have a good weekend?
Yeah, wonderful. I want to see the movie yesterday.
Oh, did you see Endgame? Oh, boy. No Endgame spoilers here, guys. Full on no Endgame spoilers here. But you could talk to me about it in private because that movie was awesome.
Stand here? I can't see him.
I think he left for dinner.
Oh my god. Wait, is everybody going to dinner?
No, it was Brian and Alicia stopped by to say hi. I know.
Okay.
Also, hey, what's up? Good to see you. Thank you. Will do. All right. Previous alumni, super cool person. They come around a lot. All right. I'm going to give 1 more minute and then we're going to get started. I like to leave a little buffer for people who have to scamper into class. I understand how it is.
Wouldn't be traffic.
What's that?
If wouldn't be traffic, would be no problem.
Yeah. I feel that. I get the traffic pretty frequently on my way here from Anaheim. It's fun. All right, let's get moving. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you here tonight. So just as a quick reminder of what you guys can anticipate for these remote classes, the general structure is that the first, I would say, half to 2/3 of the class is going to be me talking to you about some topic that I feel is pertinent based on the materials you've been going through in the past couple of days. Something that I want to give more touch points on and a chance for you guys to ask questions, the things that are really going to be the major takeaways in this class. And then after that time is up, there'll be a little bit of buffer time at the end of the class where you guys can bring forward any questions that you guys might have on the material so far. If there's something you've been struggling with on the prototypes, something you'd like more information on, all that sort of fun stuff. Cool? Sweet. So today I've got 2 pretty big topics that I want to talk to you guys about. First of them is CSS. We didn't get to touch on that at all on Saturday by design, and we're about to dive into it today. So we already talked about what HTML is, right? It's the skeleton of your website, the thing that everything hangs off of, but it doesn't really do much beyond just being that structure. CSS is how you make your websites more exciting. They give it that extra flavor. You add color and shape and all that sort of fun stuff. So I'm going to show you guys how to use CSS within your documents. And the initial thing that I want you to know is that there is multiple different ways to apply CSS. And they range from the best way all the way down to I don't want you to ever do this ever, right? We're going to go from the worst and work our way up to the best. So you guys can see how this thing scales and understand why the worst ones aren't good. So the first way to apply CSS is called inline styling. And the way that works is you're going to actually end up putting your CSS directly on the element that you want to apply styling to, which seems intuitive at first, right? But let's see how that works in practice. Before I jump into that, I'm going to show you guys a shortcut that you guys aren't allowed to use yet. This is not yours at this moment, but it will be soon. So on Saturday, we spent a lot of time talking about the HTML skeleton and how to put that together, right? It was a nice 30-minute chunk of us working our way through that. Well, I'm about to show you a fun way to make an HTML skeleton quick. The way to do that is exclamation point, tab. We're done. HTML skeleton, whoo, all set and ready for you. You can't use this yet. The reason is you don't know your HTML skeleton by heart yet, and that's something you do need to know. That's one of those things that you just need to memorize because it's always there. And if you become too dependent upon your shortcuts, then it shows off a huge hole in your knowledge. So, you know, this is obviously a very over-exaggerated example, but if you get into a work interview to try and get a spot in a company and you've got excellent JavaScript skills and everything's in order, and then they say throw an HTML skeleton on the board and you write exclamation point tab, you're not getting that job, right? It's just not going to happen. You need to be able to pull out the basics on top of your advanced knowledge, right? So you can use this shortcut as soon as you feel confident that if at any point I stop you and say, quick, tell me how to make an HTML skeleton, you can drop it without hesitation. As soon as you reach that line, you have my permission to use this. Cool? I can do that, so I get to use this shortcut. It saves me a few keystrokes. So this is my basics. By the way, up in here, you can see there's some meta tags that you haven't encountered really so far. And just as a cursory flyover, these are tags that give additional information to the browser about what your page has in it. To start, there's not very many you're going to actually use very much. They are chiefly primarily for the sake of SEO. Have you guys all heard that term before? If you haven't, it's okay. Just as a cursory review, because I can't see the faces of all my people at home, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And it's just a really fancy term for the things that Google keeps an eye out for to place you higher in their list of searches, which is extremely important for business people because when was the last time you went to Google page 2? Probably 10 years ago, at least, right? Everybody goes to the first 3 links, and if you have to scroll past that, you try a new search. That's just human nature at this point, right? So if you get bumped to the second page of a Google search, it's like you're not even in the Google search at all. So everybody's aiming to sit high. And that's what SEO is all about. The good news is you guys aren't going to have to worry about that, by and large. SEO is kind of a career in itself. You should be aware of it in some ways, and there are certain things that you're going to want to know, but it's not the primary focus of your career as web developers. So it's something to be aware of, but you don't have to worry too much. That being said, this one right here on line 5 is very important, and we'll talk more about why that's important later in the class. But as a flyover, it's just the thing that makes it easy for your layouts that you create to switch to mobile sizing, because phones act differently in how they render pixels. So you have to account for it. But that's just what those are. So cool, let's jump into the CSS. So let's say I want to start with just a headline tag. We'll do the big one, H1. And here's some text. Cool. Let's take a look at this as it is right now, just so we can get a baseline. And there we go. There is our super exciting black text on a white background. Let's jazz this up a little bit. What do you say? So the way that you do inline styling is it's going to go directly on that element. And there is a whole paradigm, I suppose you might call it, for putting things on elements themselves. HTML has a lot of features that are dependent upon putting additional information in your tags. Those are called attributes. Attributes are some additional stuff that you put on your element directly. Dwight, I am going to mute you, my friend, just so the audio doesn't switch. If you guys want to communicate, make sure you do so through the Slack channel. I don't hold it against you. Don't worry. Just it's hard sometimes to keep things quiet. I want to make sure everybody's on an even playing field. So cool. Again, over here we have attributes which go on our elements directly. Some of those have special meaning. Some of them can be defined by you. But the ones that have special meaning have something that the browser looks for when it finds that attribute, and then will do that information, use that information however you're trying to use it, right? So in this case, we want to do CSS. And there is an attribute on every visual element that you can use called style. And that style attribute will hold your CSS. So let's use that. By the way, attributes are always in the opening tag. So the tag that has the slash in it right here, you will never put anything inside of that. There is no case in HTML that I'm aware of, and I'm like pretty darn confident that you would never actually put any sort of configuration information there. It's solely a marker for the end of your element. So we're going to be putting stuff in here, which means I'm going to do a space, and we're going to use that style attribute. So when you're using an attribute, you give the name, and then you say equals, and then inside of quotes, you would give whatever value you want that attribute to have. So this is an example of a key value pair, which you guys saw in your materials over the weekend, hopefully. It's a very present paradigm in coding in general. It's just something being given a name that has a specific value that correlates to it. And this is the sort of thing you see in your daily life as well. You just maybe don't necessarily think about it. So stuff like Cody Miller is the key to the value, which is my genetic code, right? Who I am relates to that name. That's how society as a whole has chosen to refer to me. They don't talk about specific instances of my genome that make me unique. There's just a name that they can point to that makes it easy to identify who they're talking about, right? And the same thing applies throughout coding. There's going to be lots of times where you have a lot of information that you don't want to have to remember specifically that. You put it inside of some other name that you can easily address and get that information from. It's like a storage container / safe box that you open up with the key being style. Does that make sense? Sweet. So let's give this some information here. The first thing I'm going to do, one of the easiest things to do with CSS, let's change the text color. So in CSS, everything that you want to change has a name as well. We're, again, in the realm of key value pairs. The names of things you want to change in CSS are called properties. So a CSS property is something that you can change. Okay? So the property to set a text color is just called color, which you'll run into down the line. There's a lot of like something dash color, and you may wonder why color is the only one that's just color. The best answer I can give you guys is the fact that color not only changes text color, it will also change border color if you don't set a border color and you use a border. So it's a grouped property in the sense that it applies to text and border. So calling it font color or text color would not be a strictly true statement. So they probably called it color to just group those things together. I would imagine is the spirit behind it from when it came out. All right. My IDE knows me well. My favorite color is chartreuse because it's hideous, disgusting, and I love it. So there we go. That is the color we'll be using today. Let's take a look at this in practice. And I come on back over here. Boom. Got ourselves some chartreuse text. It's horrid, but let's continue to move this forward. Let me jump into Slack really quick, by the way. If you guys have anything to say along the way, please don't hesitate to let me know. I will be checking in here periodically to see what conversation is going on. And those of you who are here in person, if you manage to spot something before me, feel free to let me know as well, and I can peek and answer questions while we're going through this. Cool. So let's add on some more stuff here. Rather than just color, I'm going to give this a background color too. So we'll say background dash color. Before I go much further, I want to take a quick aside on the syntax of what we're doing here. So with CSS, a property name, the thing that you want to address, is always followed by a colon. That is the separator between the property name and the value you want it to have. And each line of CSS should be followed by a semicolon. Semicolons are what tell CSS this line is done, a new line is about to start. So you always need that semicolon. CSS is very strict about that, with a couple exceptions, which I'll go over later with you. So we started out with our color attribute here, color property, colon, and then the value, chartreuse, semicolon. Now we're onto a new property, background color, colon. I'm now going to give it its color. So for this one, I'll say Firebrick. I like Firebrick a lot. Colon. All right. I'm also going to make this text italic. So let's do font. I believe it's decoration. Text decoration. There it is. Text decoration. Italic. Underline. Underline. And then it's font style. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm going to underline it and then font dash style. This will be italic. Okay, let's give this a border too. We'll do border 3 pixels, groove, and Rebecca purple. Okay, yes.
Are quotes always used after equals?
Only in HTML, but in HTML, yes, it's always followed by quotes. Yes, then you were correct, sir. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on there. Let's see. I'm going to up the font size here too. So let's do font dash size, and we'll make that 50 pixels. So let's take a look at this really quick, just so you guys can see what we've got so far. Woo! Look at that beautiful, beautiful text. Something straight out of 1992, right? It's beautiful. Who wants to tell me the first problem with inline styling? Does anybody have an idea? Yes.
Completely static. You can't use it anywhere else.
You can, but it comes at a cost.
Okay.
But that is one of the main downsides. It's very unique. It only applies to this one element, right?
Right.
Let me lead you to the next issue that I spot, unless somebody has a guess. Who wants to tell me what was the words I had inside of this element? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exactly. Here's some text. Did I hear it?
Here's some text. Yeah.
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 It's over here. How did you know?
My brain. I didn't.
You had to remember it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't see it over there. Because check out all this stuff. Hey, who can tell me what the 3 meta tags were that were inside of the head? Yeah. Because guess what? They're all the way over here, right? Left to right scroll is the enemy when it comes to development, because that means as you're working, you're going to have to go back and see what's going on over here. Okay, let's slide our way back over to here. Oh, I forgot what's up here. You know, you're doing this back and forth deal. It's not ideal for anybody. This kind of follows the same sort of trajectory as how you would like to experience a website. When was the last time you did left to right scrolling on a website? Probably never, if a very long time ago, right? It's not ideal behavior. We like to experience things vertically, right? So this leads into the next problem with it, right? You don't want to have to chain all this stuff out inside of the element. That's a mess. The more pertinent difficulty, that's kind of nitpicky a little bit though. The more pertinent difficulty is what Josh was alluding to, which is, let's say I have a p tag down here, and inside of this, I've just got some text, but what if I want this p tag to have the exact same styling as that h1? I want to carry this forward. How am I going to accomplish that? Copy, paste, right? Which, to start, probably doesn't seem like a huge deal, but this is, I mean, okay. We're at like probably 5 seconds or so that it's taken me so far to get to this point. Come into here, paste it, save it. All right. That's a round trip of like 10 seconds just to get another element with the same style, right? And that seems nitpicky too at this moment, I'm sure. It's like, okay, well, you can copy paste, no big deal. But on a real website, we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of individual elements. And each of those has styling that correlates to it. And you often repeat styling with multiple different elements. So that leads into a really important mindset that you want to carry forward with you while you're coding. We call it the DRY principle. And it basically means, it stands for don't repeat yourself. It's very tongue-in-cheek, fun stuff for all of us developers to joke about, but it's also very true. Anytime you're doing something more than once, you seriously need to consider if there's an alternative, because 2 times leads to 3 times leads to 50 times. And at that point, you are not operating at maximum efficiency, right? All of what we do in our career is trying to make things as efficient and straightforward as possible. Weaponized laziness, right? I want to do as little as possible forever, so I'm going to work hard at first, right? So this goes completely counter to that, because right now I'm copying and pasting, and if I have another element that I want to have the same styling for, copy paste, repeat ad nauseum to make a full website. Terrible. Yeah.
With the left-right principle, would you put after each semicolon another line and block it down?
And you could do that.
Because otherwise it would disappear off to the right.
Right. And at that point, it's not the worst. I've seen people do that before with, especially with like other attributes that have a long thing nested inside of it. But it's still not super ideal, because that means that one element is now taking up multiple lines without multiple lines of content inside of it. So it seems like it's going counter to how your structure should actually be.
Okay.
As much as possible, you want an element in HTML to take up a single line where possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that is not the worst of it. There's an even worse thing about inline styling that I'm not going to go super deeply into right now. We're going to go into it deeply next week, but I don't want to leave you guys wondering until then. So just as a flyover, inline styling is far too strong. It interferes with how CSS is applied in general and exerts too much influence on its own. So we don't use it primarily. That's the major reason we don't use it. Repetition is a chief one, but that other reason, the one we'll go into next week, is the worst part. So all this is to say, screw inline styling. It sucks. It's just the worst possible way to do CSS. There is very, very, very rare cases where you would actually use it. And I would say approaching 0 cases where you would use it writing it directly into the HTML. Every once in a while, it gets used by proxy because you've put styling on with JavaScript, and maybe you did inline styling that way. It's okay at that point, but there's still a better way to do it. So basically, the long and short of it is don't do it this way, right? But you need to know about it because you're going to run into it. There are people that do it this way, and I don't want you to feel like that's good code, because it's not. So here we go. Next one. This is the worst one, right? The next one I'm going to show you is, okay, I almost never would actually use it myself, but it has its merits. And we'll talk about what is going on with it in a second. But that method is called an internal style sheet. And what that means is I am creating a little bubble of real deal CSS, but it's going to be inside of my HTML document. And we're moving towards a better place because since CSS is not visual but influences visuals, where should it really be located? Not in the body tag. The head tag. Yeah, head tag is for your non-visual stuff, as we kind of touched on Saturday, right? And at this point, we've got our CSS in the body tag on the element itself, which is kind of counter to how we want to influence this stuff, right? So I'm going to take this out. Actually, I think I might even still have it. So let's go to here. The way that you do an internal style sheet is inside of your head tag, you're going to make an element called style. This is not an attribute at this point. It's a full style tag. And then this tag, inside of it is a whole world of real deal CSS. inside of this little microcosm, this little element is CSS land. There is no HTML here. Case in point, I'll prove it to you. Let's say I put in an element type. I'm going to try and make another tag in here. We'll do just a p tag. Tab. No complete, right? Because that shortcut doesn't exist in this area because this is CSS. It's not going to build an HTML tag for you, right? Even if I go the long way and write in a p tag, at me, got the little red lines. Like, what are you doing, dude? You are in the wrong spot, right? So this is a whole different language now. We are in real deal CSS at this point. So I'm going to take what I had before, this whole bit, all this stuff, and we're going to take off the HTML portion of it, and I'm going to show you how CSS is actually formatted. So the first thing is I don't need all this just yet. I'm going to copy it, cut it out again, and then the first thing that we need to do in CSS is say where this styling is applying to. And there's a reason for that. We didn't need to do that on the element because we were already there, right? That styling goes on that element. It knows where it's going by virtue of the fact that it's sitting there, right? But now we're in a whole separate world. We're in the head tag inside of CSS land, and that doesn't live on any particular element. So we have to say what we want this to actually apply to. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. But the principal way, the first way you're going to learn is just on the tag type. So you can just specify a type of tag and apply that styling to it. So in this case, I have an H1 tag and a P tag that I want this styling to apply to. So you start with just the name of that element, so H1. And I want this to apply to two different types. I'm going to use what's called a grouped selector, which is you can specify multiple things you want it to affect, comma delineated. So a comma between each one. So H1, comma, P. And then we're going to do curly braces. Curly braces hold all of that stuff. Inside of these curly braces is whatever styling we want to apply to these pieces. Okay? So I'm going to paste in what I had from before, and we're going to make this CSS friendly. So I'm going to bring each one of these down to their own line. Kind of what you were referring to, Josh. This is the same sort of spirit, but this is how CSS is meant to be written. Yeah, this is the actual desired syntax. So you were on the right track. You could have been.
You don't do the other thing because it's garbage.
Yeah, I mean, this probably still looks a little weird because you don't have a whole bunch of experience with CSS yet. But after I take this away, if I do this whole thing and we remove this part, and then I come down here and we remove this part, check out how much cleaner our document is right away. Like, this is much more straightforward. I understand exactly what's happening purely based upon the fact that I have mentioned what elements I'm affecting and what I'm doing to them. And then these, I can see my text directly. I know the structure of my document. I can see that these are just siblings. There's no additional information. We're good, right? So let's take a look at this. I'm going to save it, open it, and ta-da, there we go, all set. So it's as easy as that. There is our CSS all set and ready, but this is still not the best way to do this. And I'll talk to you about why. Number one is that this style sheet is only for this document. It only exists here in index.html. And in a proper website, there's usually multiple pages, right? And across those pages, there's usually some sort of a theme that persists as well, right? A font that you use across pages, a font size, maybe some color, images that get used in multiple places, your icon, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? Well, for that styling that changes or that stays the same across pages, if you use internal style sheets, you have to write that in every single document that uses that styling. And going back to just a few minutes ago when we talked about the dry principle, we're in the same spot, right? We're not repeating ourselves for this document, but amongst all of those documents, we are repeating ourselves. So we're still not following the dry principle, right? We want to get to a point where we can repeat things as little as humanly possible. The other downside to this one is in real CSS for a real production website, you're going to have a lot of styling. Hundreds, if not thousands of lines of code, right? Just for your CSS. And then for the website, there'll be even more hundreds, if not thousands of lines of elements that you're working with, right? And if you have all of that in one document, this now becomes a insurmountable Goliath to try and walk through, right? Somebody's like, hey, I need you to change this one element inside of the header tag, halfway down the page. You're gonna be like, good God. Yeah, exactly. Like, here's my resignation. It's been fun. I don't want to deal with this, right? So better to break it up a little bit. I would like my huge HTML document to be just my HTML document. And my CSS should be in its own document that I can easily reference. So now we get to the best way, primarily the only way you're going to apply your styling by and large. And that is an external style sheet, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to make a document solely for CSS. Its own little CSS world, and we're going to bring that document in to whichever page we want it to be a part of. Cool? So let's start that up. We need to make an actual CSS document to use. And generally speaking, the default name for a CSS style sheet is style.css. .css is the actual file type. You need that present on any CSS document, just like how .html tells our IDE this is an HTML document. Style is just the first name that we usually give to the default for a style sheet. There's no special meaning to it. It's solely for best practices. Humans like to be able to see it at a glance and know we're looking at the default, the main one. So in here, we're going to do the same thing. I could just take this. This is CSS. So I'm going to cut that out and then throw it over here. And we'll save that. I will get rid of my style tag here. And we'll save that. And look at that. Even more readable. We're doing great, right? Let's take a look at it. Proof positive that it worked. Crap. It did not work. What did I do wrong?
You have to link them.
I have to link them. Exactly it. So this leads into a very important lesson for development as a whole. I think we may have touched on it on Saturday, but I'm still going to touch on it again. Computers will not assume things for your benefit. They do what they're told. They are hyper intelligent babies, right? They have no personal agency. They're not going to seek out like new knowledge, new thoughts on their own. They do what they're told, and they do it very well, but they're not going to make decisions for you, which is good in the end. It's frustrating at first because you want the computer to understand what you want it to do, but assumption is the mother of error, right? When you start assuming, sometimes it's helpful, but most of the time it's harmful, right? And I don't want the computer to just go, hey, I think this might be what you wanted. I'm just going to give it a shot, right? That's erroneous behavior. It's going to cause problems for me in the long run. So jumping off of that, right now, I have a style.css, and it's right next to my index.html, but I didn't create any sort of a connection here. And the computer is not going to open up this HTML document and go, oh, there's no CSS for this. I mean, maybe I should look and see if I can find some. It won't do that. It's just going to assume, oh, you wanted a plain black text on a white background web page? Sure, can do. And it'll do it for me, no problems. So we need to actually create that connection. We need to tell this HTML document, hey, I have some CSS for you. You just need to go and find it really quick, right? The way we do that is with a special kind of tag in the head, because again, this is non-visual information, so I want to put it in the head tag. And it's called a link tag. So I'm just going to throw in link here and then hit tab, and it auto-completes it for me. And this leads into a couple of different things that I want to cover. Number one, this tag has no closing tag. Notice that. There are others like it as well. Notice the meta tags don't have a closing tag, right? And there's other elements that you'll encounter that are the same. Things like the image tag. Image tag has no closing tag. There's not very many, but the criteria, the thing that you want to remember for why you don't need a closing tag is elements that don't have internal stuff. So like I don't need to have text here, right? There's no need for that. A link tag is just looking externally for something for me, right? I don't need to have any extra information. The information that this link tag needs is going to be on that element. Same goes for meta tags, right? Meta tags don't have text or child elements. They're just a way for you to relay additional information in some way, right? So that's what's going on here. The link tag is going to look elsewhere for that style sheet, but it's going to do that by me giving it an address to look for. Okay? So before I go into that portion, notice that when I did my autocomplete, it gave me this full attribute by itself with the name and the value. Just auto-completed it for me. Why would it do that? Well, the reason is that link tags are almost exclusively used for style sheets. It's a way to link to a CSS document by and large. There are other things that you can do, hence the existence of this attribute, because if there's an attribute, then there's probably multiple things that it can have as a value. But 99.9% of the time, if you're using a link tag in your document, you're reaching for a style sheet, right? And so that's what this is saying. Rel stands for relationship. We're telling the HTML document this link tag's relationship to this document is a style sheet, okay? It's not strictly necessary. If you had a link tag where you left that off, you would theoretically be okay, but that goes back to what we talked about on Saturday, which is that we don't want the computer to ever have to guess anything. And we talked about that a few minutes ago too. It's going to come up a lot, right? So by and large, it's better to give more information so the computer doesn't have to guess on your behalf. There are certain things it will guess and certain things it won't. So better to just give this forward. And that leads into the next thing that popped up, this href thing that has empty quotes.
That's what you put in the index HTML.
That's where you put in the link to the style sheet. Yep. So whatever path you need to get to that style sheet. It stands for hyperlink reference. It just means go to this location. I want you to bring that stuff into this document, basically. So let me get the path for my style sheet. I'm going to throw that into there, save, open, refresh, boom. It works. Easy as that. Except I just committed one of the cardinal sins of development. The CSS and HTML police have just rounded up the squad and they're on their way to this location right now. Does anybody have a guess what that cardinal sin is that I just committed? Let me lead in with a question. How many people on Earth do you think there are that have the file path users Cody Miller desktop LFZ example style.css?
It's a private
Everybody.
link.
It's not private. This could exist,
Okay.
but it probably exists on one person's laptop in the world, right? Me. So it works for me, but everyone else in the world is broken for, right? Unless they are being very creepy about their file system, you know? Otherwise, they're screwed. They're not going to get anything out of this. It's an empty, useless tag for them. It's going to look for something that doesn't exist. Because websites work on the same principle here. They have a whole file folder directory system that they use and traverse to find things for it, but it has its own file path as well. And probably none of those servers have anything close to this. So somehow we need to find a way to refer to this file without having to say the entire list of things that lead up to where it is, right? Well, thankfully, there is a tool that we can use for that purpose, hence the existence of the internet. So this is the tool that we're going to use is called a relative path. What you see before you right now is called an absolute path, the path from the very root of the system to the location that I want to reach. But there's no way to know an absolute path for a proper server. No server is going to give you the information of its entire file system, and you don't want to have to go in there and change every link to account for whatever path that server is using. Or what if they shift their server farm somewhere else? You don't want to have to log in and change your absolute path every time that happens, right? So we want a way to just talk about these files from where we currently are. The portion that we're building, this folder system that we're working inside of, I want to be able to reference it from that point. Relative path is where we're going to reach for in that point. So a relative path, rather than building from the root of the system, builds from where you're currently located. So in this case, I am located in index.html. Where is the style sheet, style.css, in relation to index.html? Same place, yeah. So to bring it to a place that's a metaphor here, in the same room with me right now, we have a student, Josh, right? And if I say, hey, Josh, I've got your attention, right? Because you're right here. You're right next to me. I don't need to give any further information beyond just saying your name. And with any luck, Josh is a good human being, which I can tell he probably is, and he actually responds to me, right? So same applies here. Style.css is in, metaphorically, the same room that I am. I don't need to give any further information here. I can just refer to it by name. Style.css. Done. Let's see it in action. And there it is, working, doing its thing. This is a relative path. What's happening underneath the hood is the computer is building that absolute path for you. When it sees this relative path, it goes, you must be referring to this from where you currently are. I'm going to get the list of all the files that lead to this point and snap that on the front of whatever path you just made, right? So that's that. That is a relative path, how you access a file from right next to you. But this is not always how these things work. In a real production website, you are not going to have 50, 60, 100 some odd files sitting in one folder. That is not the recipe for a fun working relationship, right? You want to try and compartmentalize things as much as possible. Segment them into related stuff so that you can easily get to that point. Think of it as like boxes for organization in your home, right? If you have your kitchen, think about your kitchen. Hopefully you don't just have a single box sitting on the counter that contains all of your kitchen tools, right? Hopefully you've got one or two drawers at least that you can keep things a little more separate. We're going to do the same thing here. So case in point, one thing that you will see relatively often is a folder that's meant to hold all of your style sheets, usually called CSS, right? So I'm going to take my style sheet and throw it into there. And now that I've done that, check it out. Womp womp. We got an issue again. It's all broke. Because this relative path no longer means anything. So to bring it back to my metaphor from before, if Josh leaves the room to go and get a cup of coffee, and I say, hey, Josh, I'm not going to get any feedback here, right? Because he's not here. He's not going to respond, no matter how upset I might get, right? I need to, in some way, if I want to get Josh's attention, I need to seek him out. I'm the one who has the agency here. Josh isn't looking for me. I'm looking for him, so I got to go and find him, right? And the same thing applies here. Style.css is no longer right next to me. It's inside of another folder. So I need to find my way to this thing I actually want to find. Well, since relative paths are built from where I currently am, what can I see? CSS folder. Yeah, there's a folder right there, CSS. I don't know that it's necessarily in there yet, but I do know that that thing exists. So let's take a look in there. CSS. And then if you put a slash, that shows that you want to go further in, right? Slash. Ooh, look at that. Autocomplete shows me that there is a style.css in there. That's a good sign. Tab. Save. Open. Ta-da! Our hideous styling is back. But we're still not in the best situation here because usually not all of your HTML documents are going to be out hanging willy-nilly with all the other stuff either, right? Usually I'm going to end up having those in some other container. So let's make a folder called HTML. And I'm going to bring that out of the CSS folder because, man, that would be interesting. And then I'm going to put the index file inside of that folder. All right. So with that, check out what happens now. We are super screwed. Our file was not found. And that's because this URL up here is pointing to a file location that no longer exists. So I can close this out. And then if I come back into here, and I'll just open it back up. Well, it opens up, but we're still in a situation where my CSS is broke, right? So now we're at a conundrum because I know how to go places, but continuing off of my previous example, Josh is out getting coffee and I am stuck in this room inside of another box that's soundproof. How am I going to reach out to Josh, right? If I'm in my soundproof box and I shout, Josh, well, I'm doubly screwed because Josh is in a different room and the room that I'm inside of, he's not there either. So I need to somehow get out of my box, get into a place where I can walk to the other room, right? Same applies here. Somehow I need to get to that style.css file, but I'm inside of the HTML folder. What can I see inside of the HTML folder? Goose egg, right? There's nothing. It's just me, myself, and I. Gang's all here, right? We don't want to be in this situation. I can't find anybody because I'm all alone. I need to leave this situation. The place that I'm in, this folder, HTML, doesn't have a path that I can follow to get where I want. So the answer is to leave. Well, how do I leave? The answer to that ties into that thing I talked about on Saturday. Remember how I said that I would explain what get add dot means for you guys? That for now it means everything, but I'll tell you more today. That moment is now. We get to talk about it. So in every file on your system, including folders are actually files. Don't worry about it too much. All of those things have another file that it points to, okay? Those are dot and dot dot. They are hidden files inside of every folder in your system, okay? And what they point to, dot always points to where you currently are, this location, which might seem useless, but trust me, I'm going to get there. And then the other one is dot dot, and dot dot always points to one level higher, wherever you came from, the next step up. And that's hugely important. Dot dot gets used a lot. Dot has its place too, but it's less frequent than dot dot. So before I jump into the actual application of dot dot, just to elucidate on what get add dot means, we are saying get add where I currently am, right? So when we say get add where I currently am, we are legitimately adding everything that we changed because hopefully you made changes in your current location, theoretically. So that's what that actually means. It doesn't really mean get add everything. It means get add all the stuff from where I currently am. So that's what that means. Yeah.
So in, say in indexed HTML, there's a dot and a dot dot file in there. If you actually like looked at the hard drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strictly speaking, it's in the folder that it's inside of.
Yeah.
The file itself doesn't have files inside of it. It just looks to the folder it exists inside of. Folders are actually files, but that's going too far. Just know that each folder in your system, each directory has reference to those two things, where you currently are and one level higher. That make sense? Sweet. I don't expect it to make perfect sense, but it'll start to come together in the end. But that's dot. That's the only thing you're going to use dot for in the near future. The get add dot, that's your only major touch point on it for the moment. It has more application later on, but you won't see it for probably at least another month. especially if you're starting this next cohort on Monday, then you'll probably see it in like 6 weeks or so. If you're starting later than that, then you've got a longer wait. It's not going to be super important for a while, but dot dot is important today. Let's see how that works. Dot dot just gives me the ability to point to one folder higher. So where I am right now, if I just type slash, I can see everything from where I currently, oh no, that would be from the root of the system. But from where I am now, I can see nothing, right? But if I do, oh, I'll show you. Dot slash shows me index.html. That's where I am, right? But if I do dot dot slash, check it out. I can see the things that are in one level above. So I'm now theoretically in this path, no longer inside of the HTML folder. I'm inside of the example folder that holds my CSS folder and HTML folder. So I managed to get out of my soundproof box at this point. And now I can walk out the door to CSS, and I can see Josh getting his cup of coffee. Style.css. Done. Let's check this out. And there it is. Back to being correct. Ugly, but correct. So we're one step closer. However, there's one other issue I want to point out. It's probably not likely you're going to have all of your HTML documents in one folder just willy-nilly, because that's really not that much different, right? We tend to group files together that are related. So let's say, for the sake of argument, this isn't really how you would do it, but just to demonstrate, I'm going to make a landing folder in here that's for my landing page, the chief page, the home page, right? And I'll throw index.html inside of there. All right, well, now we've got another problem. I'm inside of a box inside of a box inside of the room that I need to leave to go and find Josh, right? How am I going to deal with this problem? We know dot dot, but that just takes us back to the same problem we were in before. I'm now inside of HTML, and I see landing, but that's still not far enough. So how am I going to get out of this situation?
Another dot dot after landing.
Man, there it is. Done. Dot dot slash. This is, it seems intuitive when I ask the question, but a lot of people wonder about it. It's like, how do I deal with going up multiple levels? Well, you can, everything has dot dot, right? Every folder in your system has dot dot. So you can chain as many of these as you want. Case in point, let's walk the trail. See how far back we can go. Dot dot slash. All right, well, there is my LFZ folder. Dot dot slash. Okay, there's my desktop. Dot dot slash. There is my tilde directory, my user directory. Dot dot slash. There's all of my users. Dot dot slash. We are now at the root of my system, the deepest level of my computer. Just to prove that point, dot dot slash, same spot. We're trying to walk out of a room that has no exit at this point, just turning in circles. You can chain as many of these as you want, you'll be fine. It's not the best way to deal with it, but you can throw as many dot dots as you want. And there will be situations where you have to chain multiples. Usually it's like 2, 3 max, but I've seen situations where it's like 6 or 7, maybe even 8 or more, you know, where you have a really deeply nested file system that you need to traverse. Sometimes it happens.
Is that like just the accepted way to do it, or is there like a?
Oh no, yeah, this is exactly the way you would want to do it, because you always want to build from your current location just in case things move. That being said, that does lead into one thing that you can do. You're not going to do it now, but a few months from now, there are situations where you get things like this, where it's like, man, I don't want to have to type in 8 dot dots every time I deal with this section of code. Well, you can change what your file system views as the default location. Make it say that you're actually located here when you're actually located in this location. Usually that's not the best way to deal with it, but it does come up. So in some instances where you're like, man, this is just far too deeply nested, I don't want to deal with this. Yeah, you can just kind of rewrite where you belong. But most of the time, this is the answer, because usually it doesn't go past like 3 or 4. And at that point, it's pretty agreed upon that it's okay. So there we go. I can see CSS. I can see style.css. Save. Whew. There we go. It works yet again. So, except I refreshed on the place that it wasn't. Bet y'all are laughing at me right now, aren't you? There we go. Open in default browser. I put it one level too far. There it is. Back to working. It's also zoomed out because it opened in a new location. Ta-da! So this is file pathing, and this is crucial to development. Knowing how file pathing works is a very important part of your job. If you know how to write code, but you don't know how to walk your file system, you're not going to be a very good coder. This, in the end, is going to feel very easy. If even after probably another week or two, you'll start to feel relatively confident in your abilities to walk over files and folders. But had you not learned this, you would be in a bad spot. So this is a very important lesson. An early lesson, yes. Introductory lesson, yes. But crucial, a cornerstone of good development. So make sure you guys get practice with this. It's going to feel weird at first, especially with the relative pathing nature. But the more you do things with it, the less difficult it's going to seem in the long run. Does that make sense? Bomb. Okay. So that was the bulk of what I wanted to cover with you guys tonight directly. Do you guys have any questions on materials, things you would like me to go over with you? I will jump into Slack and give my remote folks a chance to write stuff down. And if you guys have questions, now is the time to just start throwing them in and I can continue to address as we go. Those of you who are here in person, you get to use your voice. Feel free to throw those questions out there and I can address them.
Just slight random question.
Yeah.
CSS, what does it most look like? Like, what is it kind of, as a programming language, what does it resemble?
Ooh, there's really not a good facsimile.
No.
And the reason is because HTML and CSS are more or less devoid of logic.
Okay.
It's all just organization and you're writing down what you want to affect. And so it doesn't look a whole bunch like anything else because it's very like, this is the name of the thing I want to affect. This is what I want to do to it. If I had to compare it to something, it would probably be JavaScript just because CSS uses a lot of curly braces and so does JavaScript.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like Java and the braces. That's
Yeah,
it.
braces and the semicolons. In that way, it does look like JavaScript. Specifically, an HTML or CSS selector, this bit, if I take away this part, that's pretty close to a JavaScript object. The only difference being that a JavaScript object would have commas instead of semicolons here. Yeah, so the syntax is relatively similar, but in behavior, CSS only really acts like CSS. It's kind of its own thing. And that's part of why people hate it.
Okay. That's why I asked it was like something else.
Yeah, you're going to run into a lot of developers out there that are like, man, I hate CSS. It's the worst. But I would say my personal hill that I'll die on, if somebody says they hate CSS, it's because they need to know CSS better. People who know CSS like CSS by and large, because there's a lot you can do with it. It's a very powerful language, but it is only powerful in the hands of a human being because it doesn't do logic. What it does is exactly what you tell it to. It won't figure things out for you. There's no like loops or progression in CSS. It's just, this is what I want you to do. Yep. And it goes, sure, done. There is a little bit of logic to CSS, but it's not logic you can write yourself. It's just how the language works. And that'll be what we'll be covering next week in terms of strength of different things within the language. But really good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked that before. And I always love a new question. Sweet. Let's see what's going on in here. Ooh, Lane. All right. So for this div, we deliver cupcakes for the important events of your life. What font are we supposed to use? I know we were supposed to follow directions, but I don't see in the directions or I missed something when I read the directions. Okay, this is for Sweet Corner part 2. Okay, let me take a look. If we didn't specify, awesome, excellent. Thank you. That probably means that we don't need to set it directly. It's probably just the one that is most readily available. But let's take a look just to be sure. So we've got our root level 1, B2, feature set 2. It was in feature set 2, you said? Oh, I see. Apply reminders for making the default font something new. Oh, okay. So this is the font family that'll end up being on that P tag. Just sans serif. You need to apply that across your document somehow. So that leads into a really important behavior in CSS called inheritance. So in CSS, there's certain things that get carried forward to children. So if you apply styling to a parent, the children will receive that styling as well. And that is exclusively pretty much font stuff. Things related to text is inherited by and large. And there's a reason for that. Most of the time you want to have that theme carry forward for an entire element, even if there's nested elements, right? If I want my header to be cursive, I shouldn't have to go into each individual text element inside of that header and go cursive, 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 cursive. Because again, dry, right? Dry code. I don't want to have to repeat that. But text usually follows that trajectory, where if it's on a parent, usually the children are all going to get it as well. So it's inherited down, right? So that means if I want everything on my page to be sans serif, what's probably the best way to do that? What in CSS, what should I apply that CSS to?
To the div of that whole area.
Yeah, if there's a containing div that holds everything, that's a perfect spot. One thing you can always do is the body tag,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
If you want it to be everywhere, put it on the body tag, right? That's going to affect all of your visuals. Now, is that the best way to do it? Probably not, unless you want it to be that everywhere. But it's a quick, dirty way to just go, this is going to be the font family for everything. Did I answer your question, Elaine? Patience. Oh, at the end of the assignment, like once you're done with everything? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have specified. We found out last round that this image was made incorrectly. This should look, if it's cursive, then it's correct. This image needs to get updated. So what you're seeing here is not exactly the way it should be.
So the tag should be in tagline should be in cursive.
Yeah, it should be in cursive. So if it's in cursive, that's correct. Yeah, my apologies. I should have told you guys about that. Yeah, thank you, Elaine, for pointing that out. Yeah, we're going to be fixing really quick, but in the meantime, just know that that text should actually look cursive. Perfect. Thank you for checking in on that, Elaine. I appreciate it. Any other questions that you guys are working through right now?
Other guys first. I was going to request just like a speed review of pulling down an assignment and putting it through Git and all that stuff. I could see it one more time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely show you how I would do that.
Okay.
So, in the meantime, continue to post your questions and stuff, guys, because if there's something that's more like code related, I'm going to jump to that just because I do have a video of the Git stuff. But in lieu of anybody asking any other questions, I'm going to jump into it. So, first thing you're going to want to do is go to the repo for whatever it is that you want to bring down.
Yeah.
Right? In this case, let's say it's my prototypes root 1. Well, I want to, number 1, I need to make a fork of this because this is not mine, right? I need to have my own version, which I do have. So we're going to go over to there. And then I need to clone this down somehow. So I would copy the address for that. And I'm going to go out of this. And then I'm going to do something you're not going to do. This is not a command that you need. I'm just going to remove the one that I currently have so that I don't have to deal with that overriding.
Not yet, right?
So this is the part where you would come in from. You want to bring it down onto your system. You do git, because we're doing git stuff, clone, because you're cloning down that repository, and then the address of where you're getting that from. Sweet. So there's that.
That's where I'm at.
Awesome. And then let's say you do some work. I'm going to open this up and throw something in there just so I can say that something got done. Let's see.
So making a branch off of one of the things that are already there on the assignment. So like, okay, this is your sweet corner, you know, now make your own version of sweet corner. I'm not sure how that works.
So for each subsequent one, you're going to be working off of the previous branch. It's not how you would do things in production.
Okay.
Simplified for the sake of what we're doing right now, so I don't have to hurt you guys too deeply. Basically, what you're going to do is for the first one, you'll make your sweet corner branch off of master, sweet corner v1.
Okay.
And then for sweet corner v2, you'll make your branch off of sweet corner v1.
So I have to do the same thing. I have to, I just have to put, can you show me that part where you make off the master to the
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's the part I think.
So let's say I've got this index page here, and then I've put in a HTML skeleton. Here's a p tag with some text. Save. Okay, cool. Well, let's see what I've got going on here. Number one, I need to get into that prototype folder because I'm in LFZ right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cd into my prototypes root folder. And then first thing I do before anything else, if I'm doing something new with Git, I always want to make sure I know what's going on right now, right? Does anybody remember the command for that? Git status, your new best friend. You're going to write that so many times. Okay, cool. I have a file I changed, but I'm still on branch master, and that's a no-no, right? I don't want to be doing work on master. So let's make a branch for my work to be on. In this case, since we're doing my sweet corner, I'll follow the trajectory of what you're going to actually do with your assignment. So I'm doing Git stuff. I'm going to be making a new branch. So to go to branches, it's checkout, right? But I'm making a new branch. So -b, right? That's how Git knows we're making something new. And then I need to give it a branch name. Well, we're doing sweet corner v1. Enter. All right, now we're on that branch. Let's say that my simple document there with that p tag is done. I've done everything I need to. Well, before I do anything else, Git status, always. Cool. Then I'm going to start saving this because that looks good. I've got my index. That's the only thing I changed. We're doing good so far. So git add everything from where I currently am. Dot. There we go. Enter. Check. Make sure it looks the way you want. Git status. Cool. It's green now. That means it's ready to save. I'm in a good spot. So we're going to save this now. Git commit -m to say I'm going to give this a message. And then something that reflects what you did. Finished first version of sweet corner prototype. Cool. Enter. I've now committed. Git status, just to be sure. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. That whole business, by the way, from Saturday with the git config and all that, that was a one-time deal. I did that with you, so you'll never have to deal with it again, unless you get a new computer. And at that point, you'll be seasoned and you won't have to worry. But from this point forward, it should be easy peasy. You just add commit, you're good. Now I need to push this forward. Tell Git about what we're doing. So tell GitHub about what we did because we're on our local system. So git push, which means I'm sending this forward somewhere. Where am I going to send it? I want to send it where I came from. Do you guys remember what that's called in Git? Yes, it's the repo origin. Origin being the name that Git gives that thing. But you're right. It's the repo for Sweet Corner, the prototype repo. So in Git, though, Git refers to that place where we came from, where we downloaded this, as origin, which gives us an easy way to point to back where we came, right? And then I need to say the name of the thing that I actually want to push forward. What is that here? Sweet Corner V1. right? The branch that we're specifically on. So we need to say that name. Corner B1. Done. Boom. And there it is. Once you get back to a point where you can type and you have your little left side thing, as long as it gives you something like this where it says, you know, remote new branch and all that fun stuff, you nailed it. You're done with the Git portion. From there, it's just going back to GitHub where we're going to be here. I can even refresh it. And sometimes it gives you like a little pop-up that's like, hey, something changed. But it's been less doing that recently. I'm not sure. Maybe they took that away, which is honestly a good thing because it didn't happen all the time.
So
Cool.
you make a pull request, but I don't know how.
So you click your new pull request button, right? Which is you saying, I want to tell LearningFuze about what I changed, basically. And then we need to go through this whole setup. So you go to your branch. Did you ever get a branch from Brett? You were the one that was missing one that day, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I got one.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. What I like to hear. Sweet. So we've got first letter of my first name, and then I can start with my last name. There I am. That's where I want to turn it into. So that's the one next to the LearningFuze one, basically where you're sending this to. And then compare tells us what we want to actually send forward. In this case, it's Sweet Corner V1. And that's that. Create pull request. And then make sure that you put your full name here. I want this to tell me who you are. So dash and then Cody Miller. Now I am ready. Create pull request. Before you go though and do it, it's always good to scroll down and make sure that your file is there. So if you don't see your HTML file with its entirety or whatever you changed, you did something wrong. Usually it's either you didn't add before you committed or you have a manual save on whichever text editor you're using and you didn't save. Either way, you want to go back and just go through the process again. Add, commit, push. And then you'd be good. But mine is there, so I'm set. I can just do create pull request. And it's done. Ta-da! There it is. Boom, bam.
Can you say a little bit more about when it's red and then it goes to green and that's the add part? What's really going on?
Yeah, so the part where it's red is kind of like
I see two versions.
well, it's more of like, think of it as like, let's say you're a firefighter, right? And you're on the scene and you need to put out the fire, but everybody's working together. And you don't just pick a corner and be like, this is the fire I'm going to fight right here, right? Like you wait for somebody to tell you, you know, go to this room. Like the bedroom on the second floor on the right is the one that I want you to be at, right? That's kind of what Git is doing here. It's not going to assume what you want to do that commit action with. You need to directly tell Git, what things do you want me to save? Because it's relatively common in development that you're not going to save every single file that you touched, right? You want to only save the ones that have legitimate changes that you want to pass forward. Now, that being said, the stuff where you have to talk about only individual files, you probably want to start with right now, you're usually going to save everything that you changed. Hence the git add dot. But I could also go in there and put the name of the file directly with a relative path. Use the relative path to that file, and I can say only save this one file. So that first step, the add, is really just me giving a destination. These are the things that I want you to actually do something with. Firefighter, go to this bedroom. This is where you're going to be doing your work, right? And then the commit portion in this metaphor is you actually turning on the hose, right? You now have your location. Now do the work. Git now knows what you want to save. By saying commit, it does the save action, right? That's where the save actually occurs. And then you go to your push. The push is an optional step. That's only there because of GitHub, because you want to have somewhere to back it up. You're basically, in real practice and production, you're using it as a backup. You don't want to have all of your current changes for your code only on your local computer because electronics are fallible. Things go wrong, right? So you have a place to send it forward to. And that's what push is doing. It's taking, I want this thing to now be saved elsewhere as well. Take it to this location and say I have new changes.
So say you had 10 red files there, you would pick say you want to save 3 of those, you would just add the 3 that these are after coffee files.
Yes.
These are the ones I really want to do. The other was the 4 a.m. ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that was just
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it just exploded, and I don't even want to deal with it.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, and then when you say add, then they go green. What happened to the red ones?
Well, let's take a look. I can show you an example of it. First, I'm going to close this pull
I don't know,
request.
see if anybody else has a question.
Well, I can peek in and see if there's other questions, but yeah, I don't want that pull request going through by accident.
But that's the real.
Cool. Everybody's going good.
Step, right?
Yeah, you're saying what you want to save. So let's say in here, I'm going to put in another element. Let me up this. And let's say now there's another p tag, more text.
Can I give you an example? Like in manufacturing, you had a drawing, and it's no longer it's no longer valid.
Yeah.
On a server, they'll like stuff it in a totally different place that nobody unlock it, so you can't get that version.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, in a way, that's sort of what you're doing.
Okay.
If you only add certain things, you're saying this stuff that I told you is for you. Everything else is off limits. Don't touch it, kid. I don't want you to deal with it, right? So let's say I made a style.css and I make some styling p tags. Should be a font size of 10,000 pixels and font style italic. Well, this is disgusting. It's terrible styling. I'm just messing around, right? But let's say I don't want to add it because of how hideous and terrible it is, right? Well, now, if I come back into my command line here and I do git status, I have 2 things present, right? One of them says modified, and one of them says untracked. So the untracked are the ones that I have not actually added yet. Since they were added before, it's aware of this one, it's ready for it, but it's still not staged, right? This one is just, I've done stuff with this before. This has never been dealt with. But okay, I'm going to just add in my index really quick. So if I did git add dot, I'm going to get that CSS file in there, and that's not good. I don't want to have to do that. I just want my index. So I can do git add, and then check a look. It gives me the path right here. Sweet corner index .html. So now instead of dot, I say the direct name of the file I want to add. Enter. Git status. Take a look. Now only the one that I added is green. This one is still not being saved. Let's say I want to take this even further. I'm going to now save it. Okay. Git commit -m made text changes to HTML started style sheet not included. Cool. Git status again. Now we have one file. Git is still aware of this thing. It's like, you didn't tell me to do anything with it, so I didn't. But I still know it's there, right? Your firefighter has put out the upstairs bedroom, and the downstairs living room is still on fire, but nobody said to deal with it yet. Maybe that's somebody else's job. I don't want to get in the way, because if I'm doing stuff I'm not supposed to as a firefighter, people die. Right? So same applies here. Git's like, this is serious business to Git. Dealing with file structure and version control is about one of the most important tasks you can have in terms of development. Having versions of things is very top tier. So you don't want it to assume anything for you, basically. It should be told exactly what to do always. And that's what's going on here. But just as proof positive, so you can see what happened, if I come back up here and I push that branch again, I come back to GitHub, number one, this is going to be just fine. Check it out. And then if I come over and look at that branch on my version, and let's start with the new pull request. Take a look. at that thing, take a look. Now the file is updated. So you can see that it's actually changed. We have that new more text, but the CSS file is not present because I didn't add or commit it.
Mhm.
So I did change stuff, but I specifically did not save it. And that's something you may run into with production development down the line,
Mhm.
but it's going to be a while. For the most part, even in production, for the most part, you just save everything you worked on because you're not usually going to spend time working on something you don't want to save. So that's what's going on there, though. That's the process, and that's why that we do dot rather than saying the name of the file directly. Because there will be times where you're sitting down to do work and you've changed 15 files.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it all.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be the worst.
Right. Okay.
So that's what's going on there. Does that help?
Totally helps.
Awesome. That was a good question. Thank you.
I rearranged an analogy to Club 57. All the red are the people in the line outside.
Yeah.
When you add it, you get to go in the club and you turn green.
There you
But
go.
when you commit it, you go to the VIP room and you get up on get.
Done. Next step. Stepping it up. One at a time. Yep. You're moving up the ladder. But yeah, that's kind of the spirit of it. And then there's so much more going on with Git. Like you're just standing at the entrance to the Git world right now. And there's more to be learned, but this is still already crippling knowledge. I understand that it's tough. So I expect you guys will be continuing to learn it as you go. Sweet. Any other questions? How's everybody doing over there? My remote clan. All right. How's everybody doing here? Anything else you'd like to review? All right. Well, we will end session for now. But before we go, I do want to highlight again, I will see you guys again on Wednesday. Same time, same place, 7 to 8:30 here on site if you can make it. If you can't, if you're going to be remote, I still love you just the same. But try and be here so that you can interact live here, meaning in class. If you're remote, that's fine too. Make sure that you guys are continuing to work on your skill assessments throughout the week. I told you I was going to badger you about it on Saturday, and I'm true to my word. All 6 of them for this week need to be done before Saturday coming up. So make sure that you guys have those squared away, okay? There'll be small group discussion that day on those things. If you're not done, you're going to miss out. So make sure you're working through them. They should be relatively short and easy to traverse for you guys as you go. If you have any questions along the way, struggles with the prototypes, the materials, please make sure you're reaching out so that we can clarify for you guys. Other than that, though, that's about it. Any final thoughts? Going once? Going twice? Waiting extra moments for the people who are listening on a delayed service? No? All right. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I will talk to you in a couple of days. Laters.